Game face is on. I'm about to start streaming. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's Squawk Talk. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this week's Squawk Talk. The window's not changing for some reason to show the speaker, and I'm not sure why, but we'll sort that out as we go. Welcome to Squawk Talk, which is going to be talking about the major No Holding Back event, which happened and finished only about half an hour ago, and had a really big impact with a record number of viewers for a Monday Night Socialist telly program, huge numbers voting in the polls, and a lot of people chipping in with questions, etc. And Dan was one of our speakers for in that event, and I'm going to bring him in to give his first impressions as to how the whole thing went.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, no, that was a fantastic event. Thanks to the organisers of No Holding Back for giving me an opportunity to have a say. And thanks also, Steve, for having me on Socialist Telly. Such a brilliant platform for so many of us and so much needed as well, I think, at this time. And just in regards to the event today, yeah, getting to the point, for me, the message was democracy. The message was solidarity. What we need to do is we need to realise that there are common issues that we can all get around. And no matter who might have voted for who might have voted for who back in 1982, which is an old saying I use now, but we still care about the same things, and that's where we need our solidarity to be brought around the table when it comes to issues. And something I learned from a friend of mine who I recently spoke about on this show, actually, Lavery, she said something brilliant recently. She said, you know, we don't kick people off the table, we make the table bigger. You know, let's bring everyone around the table. And that's exactly what was done tonight, man. Like, just listening to the people's views, their ideas, what they want. Richard Dunbar talking about what he's listening to people saying in Bradford, where he's a councillor. Listening to trade unionists, listening to people who are actually talking to not just Labour members, but people who actually live the lives that this government create, giving their ideas, given what they want to see the future to look like at such a pinnacle time when we have the opportunity to really shape the future. You know, we've got, in the run up to the 2019 election, we had a short amount of time to try and do things, right? We've got until 2024 now to really start digging in. The pandemic, hopefully, you know, I'm not going to say it is definitely over, but we're going to start easing out of it, hopefully. Let's start getting our teeth into things. We don't have to do that through Parliament. Right now, we can start doing it on the street. You know what I mean? Your next door neighbour, their neighbour's neighbour, and their neighbour's neighbour's neighbour. You get where I'm going. That's what we need to be doing. And this is how we start. We start with people's ideas and we bring people together around them. So that was my message from tonight, and the vibe I got from it all. Thanks, Steve.
Fantastic. Bonnie, you were another speaker at the evening. What did you make of it?
Well, what a privilege to be involved in such an important event. What we saw, as Dan was saying, was a lot of people getting involved and getting active in politics. Jeremy Corbyn faced attacks from the moment he was elected leader of our party. Until that point, the establishment were writing him off, that it was never going to happen. He wasn't seen as a threat. But as soon as he was elected, he went from this person who's got these eccentric ideas to someone who's a real threat to the establishment. And they did everything they could to knock him down. They succeeded in removing him from position. But what they didn't realise is he encouraged and contacted and engaged with thousands of people across the country. And whilst they've removed him, they will not remove the ideas that people were inspired by. And the more that we get to hear what people's ideas are and what they want, the more power we've got, the more powerful we become, because we become a massive group of people. It was always about for the many, and we are the many, and we're going to make clear what we demand from a government and from our opposition.
Fantastic. And Damo, you didn't speak in it that I heard, but you were there all the way through, as I understand it. Tell us what impression.
I was quiet as a church mouse, mate. I was just loving having my feet up and watching the show, and what an absolute show it was. What a brilliant, well missed opportunity to get engaged and inspired and excited again. It seems so long since we've had that. We've kind of forgotten what it was like to have a bit of a brave Labour Party that was prepared to challenge the establishment, if you like, the status quo. We need a braver Labour again now. We need a Labour that's going to be prepared to stand against such things and stand up for ordinary people once again. We had it, as Bonnie's just excellently outlined, with Jeremy Corbyn as our leader, and we've lost it since, and we won't present ourselves as a government in waiting to anyone until we start standing up for people again and standing for something. And the No Holding Back team, they've been going for weeks with their podcast. They've held this fantastic poll tonight. They have been true fighters here, absolute troopers, staunch working class figureheads leading a charge here, and brought an awful lot of people along with them tonight. And where others have said now is not the time, these are working class stalwarts and activists like, you know, the likes of you and I. They've said no, people are suffering, people are struggling. It's gone past time to act now. They've been there, and above all, they've listened to people. They've actually sought out our views. And we've provided them thousands of views today in the polls that have come through and set a direction. Why would the Labour leadership not snap that up now?
Well, why indeed? I don't think anybody's holding their breath about that, but I think it showed a lot. I mean, the viewing figures, you know, there was a technical hitch that meant that the Facebook feed didn't go out. It went out live on YouTube and on Twitter. It'll go out on catch up on the Facebook later on. But in spite of that, we still saw record viewing numbers for during the live event itself. For a Monday night, 24,000, I think it was, by the time that the hour or so had finished. What does that say about the appetite among the movement to see people actually telling it like it is and giving a bit of vision?
Well, when you...
Demo, yeah, so we were still on you. Let's go.
Yeah, no problem. Well, you know, it started at the top of the show. We had these figures on these slides that John Trickett was introducing. £433 billion in lost wages since 2010. But at the same time, the 1,000 richest people in the country have increased their wealth by 538 billion. This is blatant class war. It's war on the poor. It's inequality, and it's blatant inequality. But it's only, I say it's blatant inequality, but it's only becoming exposed because, you know, the likes of this channel are talking about it. It doesn't get discussed in anything like the mainstream media. And we're at a point now where even the Tories are having to admit that something has to be done, except for their hard right, more extreme elements, shall we say. And with the rumor that on Wednesday, Rishi Sunak is going to propose a rise in corporation tax, how any Labour leadership could oppose this is utterly beyond me. To be to the right of the Tories on taxation really is the most insane thing. And this is exactly what No Holding Back have asked the questions of. They've asked questions, thousands have answered. They're going to take this forward to make the case for where Labour has to change. And it does have to change. Where 70% of the public, according to a recent Survation poll, agree that this is the action that needs to be taken. It makes Labour's stance and their claim to be listening even more risible, because clearly nobody on that Labour front bench is listening.
Risible is about the word. I mean, in terms of not listening, even the excuse from some of Keir Starmer's supporters that he's appealing, he's trying to appeal to Tories by not wanting to raise taxes on the wealthy and on big corporations, doesn't stand up, because 2/3 of Tory voters want to see it done as well. And among the general voting public, the desire for that is overwhelming. So he's managing to, well, somebody used a very unpleasant or very not broadcastable term for that, and finished off with "up the wall," as in, and it wasn't spaffing. But he, in terms of his credibility and appeal, he's put that up the wall, and it hasn't even gained anything on the side of the Tory voters that he's supposedly wanting to pursue. Bonnie, let me bring you in on that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, I can understand we need to win more voters from elsewhere, but Tory voters will always vote Tory. And I'm sure all of us on this panel spent all those years, up until about 7 or 8 years ago, maybe, knocking on door after door, trying to win votes for Labour candidates. And we were told on the doorstep every time, what's the point in voting for you? Can't get a cigarette paper between you and the Tories. So unless you're going to come up with something that you're going to make my life better with, why would I bother voting? And as a result of that, what we saw was the biggest single demographic in any election was the non-voter. People became disengaged with politics because no one was standing up for them, and no one was standing up to offer something different to the established way of doing things. And obviously we've seen in this country 30 years of, or 40 years probably now, of neoliberal economics. We need a change. Like, if we want to attract people to vote Labour, the people we really need are those that don't bother going to the polling station to cast a vote. Forget the Tory voters, they're going to vote Tory. You know, we're appealing to the wrong audience altogether there.
Well, absolutely. Dan, you live on Merseyside, an area that's seen a lot of messing about by the Labour Party this week.
No.
What do you make of the whole situation?
I haven't noticed any messing around this last week. It's been quite quiet, in fact, compared to normal. No, like, do you know what? It's such a good point there, Bonnie, about who the party is trying to reach. And I had that feeling in 2015 because I stood for council in 2015, and that, like, on the general election. And it was just like, I was like, look at all these people that don't vote. They're so, you know, these great people. And then everyone was like, oh no, but they vote. And I was like, yeah, but they vote Tory. Like, they voted Tory for years. Why talk to them? You know what I mean? And the rest of the country one way, and Blundell Sands, big up the Socialist Republic, went another way. But no, real talk, that's a big thing about, I suppose, when you're talking about actual kind of, when your politics are founded, when you're founded in your politics, and when you're talking about socialism, it's about reaching out for everyone. Socialism is about everyone, making sure that everyone's involved, everyone has a piece of the pie. And the people who vote, they have a piece of the pie. They're in there. They know what they're doing. They got it. And the people who don't vote, clearly, from experience, I'm talking here, is that they don't feel that they have a piece of the pie, so they don't have a right to be able to say anything. And if they do say something, they're going to be held to blame for different things, and they don't want that responsibility while they have nothing. You know what I mean? It's just a vicious cycle. And I suppose tonight is a perfect display that, you know, what No Holding Back have done is a perfect display of how we can actually change people's minds, get them involved, get them to make a difference. And I love stories, Steve. So I'm going to tell a quick story. But during the EU election, I went to a college in the Wirral to teach them about, like, what politics is, because these kids had no idea. And what was beautiful at the beginning, I got them to do like a mock election. It was just really quick, like a 10-minute thing. And there was the blue side and the red side. And just for the blue side won, but there wasn't actually that many votes. There was more people that didn't vote. And it was a perfect example at the end, because I taught them about how they can have a say in politics. They voted again, and the red one won. And the red one was actually the one that had some decent policies, and like was like, do you know what? I want to make sure that we get longer lunch breaks, but also we're getting more time to do our assignments and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, really, and it was brilliant. And you know, you can do that with 16-year-olds. Why don't we just do that with everyone? And tonight was a perfect display of that.
It was. So, Bonnie, you were in there through the whole meeting. Tell us a little bit about what the results were in terms of the poll that came out.
Yeah, so an astounding 3,729 people responded to the live poll. This is on top of people that had responded to the poll that had gone out previously through social media. So the polling directly from the live show was 3,729 people voted on what they thought should be the key plank of policy and the direction that we were going to push in. The biggest result came for people voting for full employment with a living wage. Most people thought that that was the most crucial campaign that we were to lead on. And I can't help but think in 2021 that we're only asking for people to be able to get an honest day's pay for an honest day's work. It just blows my mind that we're still fighting for that. You know, these are fights that we've had for centuries as working class people. Let me work for you and pay me something that I can keep a roof over my head and feed my family. It's outrageous. But anyway, that was the most high scoring option. And then shortly after that, people were supporting a wealth tax, which is obviously letting people with the broadest shoulders carry the most weight. Because as you said earlier, obviously the billionaires have basically put their hands in the pockets of all the working class people and help themselves to their income. It's been a pound for pound transfer, more or less, from the poorest to the 1,000 wealthiest people. So that makes sense. And the one that came next was, well, they called it the Marshall Plan, but actually what we're looking at is investing in people and investing in jobs and infrastructure to create jobs, get the economy going. And of course, if we get that, then we will have full employment, we will have living wages, and we can still have a wealth tax, you know. So all of them in a way feed into each other, but people are desperate to have full employment and enough money to live off, you know. I think was it John Trickett or Ian Lavery, Dan? One of them said, you know, all we're asking for is the earth, which is, you know, a quote I actually use quite often as well. We're asking for everything, but at the same time, it's the minimum of what we should be able to expect.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I can't remember who it was. Sorry.
Go ahead, Demo.
Yeah, I mean, that is a phenomenal set of results that have come through from a couple of polls for something that's been done, you know, live as the show has gone on, and I think it does speak to the you know, where we're at as a nation at the moment. To be asking for full employment and a living wage, as Bonnie said, this is the sort of thing you should expect to get. It's part of the social contract that we're supposed to have with the state. You know, we will give you hours of our labor. You give us remuneration in return, so that we can afford to live and we can afford to raise our families and, you know, buy a house, and just simple things that everybody wants. And it's not a lot to expect, really. But for us to have to say, this is what we want to the Labour front bench, this is a message we need to send to you now, because you don't seem to be listening to us, you haven't put this on the table yourselves. Well, why not? Get on with it. The wealth tax came very, very close with it as well. And John Trickett popped up with the wealth tax. And, you know, it's a one-off move, essentially. Once you've done it, it's over. And if you haven't actually addressed how the inequality to start with came along, then the wealth tax is just a short-term sticking plaster solution. You've got to change the way, you know, the wealthier are taxed, and how the poor are taxed, and how the poor are paid, and how the rich are paid, and to get that inequality down, to reduce that inequality, which has gone to bizarre proportions. Like Bonnie said, it's virtually a pound for pound exchange from the poor to the rich over the last 10 years. It's a crazy, crazy amount of money. When you're talking 500 billion pounds, it's madness. These are simple, basic necessities. They're not asking a lot of the Labour front bench to stand up for these things. Stand up for them.
That's, yeah, Damo, I agree. Sorry, Steve, I just want to jump in there again.
No, go ahead.
Another of the moves that we can expect from the budget on Wednesday is that they'll cap the rates for income tax, which will mean as inflation goes up, I mean, the government have just printed billions of pounds worth of money to get them out of the hole that they've created in giving their mates 2 billion for track and trace and so on. So in order to, let's coin a phrase that they like, balance the books, what they're going to do is they're going to leave the tax rates exactly where they are, which is going to see people that are lucky enough to still have a job and be, you know, paid better, a little bit more than the average wage, but are by no means rich. They're going to see them trip into the 50p tax rate. Now, that is a stealth tax on people, as I say, they're lucky enough to still have a job, they're lucky enough to still be earning over the living wage, but there are people that are considerably richer than that ought to be taxed to begin with. We want the money off the richest, not off the working class.
Absolutely. Dan, you were trying to come in before and I said Demo when I went down, so I brought Demo in instead.
No, it's all right. I was saying, I don't remember who said that phrase, but it did definitely settle in there, Bonnie. And just on the point of like what to expect from this budget, I think that one of the things that we definitely need to do on the left is not really be surprised. Look, this budget, they always do. These are like the masters of spin, you know what I mean? They put loads of shiny things in front of you while swipe your feet and your eyes are distracted looking at all the shiny things, and you don't realize until your face is flat on the floor, and then you ask who done it, and that's where a lot of people feel, I suppose, sometimes a bit maybe embarrassed that that's happened to them, because that's what this government have done, from Margaret Thatcher, by the right to buy the houses. You know, while she was making people feel good for being able to buy their houses, she was stealing the people below them, the houses from the people below them, because there was nothing coming back into the system for the people. And that's the big thing that we need to think about, is like all of the things that people voted on today that came out, the positive outcome we saw on those votes, was that people were talking about putting back into the system. They were being very, may I use the word and dare to dream, that they were being pretty patriotic, thinking about what we can do to help our own economy, what we can do to help our own neighbors. Oh, it sounds like socialism. I love that word. It sounds like socialism. And that's what people were voting for tonight. Literally, like, these are good things that help our country, help our economy, and in my opinion, are pretty patriotic. And what this government do is they're unpatriotic. Is that a word? I don't know, but I'm going to use it tonight.
Yeah,
and it's boss. But yeah, literally what they do is they wave the shiny things, and then they're swiping and swiping and swiping, and more people are falling flat on their faces. And I mentioned the NHS earlier tonight as well, actually, but I'll mention it again. You know, I saw this documentary a few years back in America, where what people do is they queue up at like 3-4 in the morning. They start queuing in the middle of this like industrial estate, and there's these massive you know, the containers they have on ships, they had these, and inside of them there's like a makeshift doctor's surgery where they can see 1 or 2 people at a time, and there's queues of hundreds of people from 3 or 4 in the morning queuing up to see a doctor. In America, you know, make America great again, in that America, people. And I just fear that we're going to get to that point in this country, because, you know, people are already getting charged for the NHS, and they can't afford their bills. Why are they going to pay to go to the NHS? You know, getting prescriptions, it's costing more and more for the prescriptions and all of those things. And these areas we need to really start thinking about. If we're going to think about how we're going to put back into our economy, I think also what we need to start doing is thinking outside of the Labour Party, and thinking on what we can actually be doing within our communities to support people, help people, whether it is, you know, I think I brought it up earlier. It was, where have I put it? This beautiful piece of this, oh my days, right? And I haven't got the 2019 one to hand, but this is like the thicker version of the 2019 one, right? There's talking about regional investment banks. Why don't we set up community investment banks? We can do that ourselves. You know, talking about putting trade unions at the heart of workplaces. Why don't we get together with, you know, trade unionists and actually just start creating our own workplaces? Why do we have to leave it to Tesco's to supply our vegetables? Why don't we literally, you know, if you've got a community where everyone's connected, and you start turning around to people and saying, look, we want to put money back in this community, start doing things ourselves. And that's real organizing in your community. And also it's local economy. It's totally just pushing away those big businesses, so we get to a point where we are looking after ourselves, and we prove that it's doable, and we prove that socialism wins and capitalism fails. So that's an encouragement for people to get up and do these things, get involved in these things, man. It's real. It's so real.
Yes, I mean, well, that sort of basic lack of economic understanding, because even if you accept that, you know, if you belonged to a school of thought that said, well, you know, we can't get rid of capitalism altogether, and there are, you know, some people like that, it still doesn't make sense not to tax the wealthy and the big companies. It still doesn't, because, you know, basic market economics and market forces would mean if a big company says, I'm not paying you taxes, I'm gonna swan off to somewhere else, smaller businesses would rise up and fill that gap, because there'd be a demand, you know.
Yeah, if we don't give them our money, then they have no money to be taxed. We don't need to worry about their taxes.
Yeah,
their
that's
taxes.
It's not rocket science. Now, the other big aspect of this meeting tonight was, you know, I mean, we're in a position at the moment where for months now, the Labour hierarchy has been doing everything it can think of to try to throttle democracy within the party, to try and, you know, I don't think it's going, you know, massively overboard to say trying to put the boots on the neck of the members and make everybody just fodder for campaigns and assume we're all just going to fall into line. Massive attacks on free speech, which is a human rights issue, etc. And yet tonight we saw, well, three figures, 2 MPs and 1 recent ex-MP, who were putting democracy by the party front and center in the, you know, in what they were doing. giving members a direct say on the issues that they'll raise in Parliament, giving members a direct say on the priorities that they pursue, and even right in the meeting, giving people a vote on what was going on, but in a more general sense, inviting members to direct and empower them in what they're doing. What does that example say about what's going on at the leadership, the official leadership level of the party at the moment?
Well,
Bonnie, let's bring you in first.
Democracy is the most revolutionary thing in the world, isn't it? So it's also the thing that frightens the establishment and the powers that be. And what we're seeing at the moment, obviously, we're operating under an unelected General Secretary. He's not been approved by conference. We were denied a conference. We've got the recall conference motion going through a lot of CLPs right now. And the number of constituency Labour parties that are saying we need a conference to talk about what's going on. Conference is our sovereign body. And if we're denied the opportunity to debate the direction of the policy that our party is taking, then we are no longer democratic socialists, which is what it says on the back of our membership cards. Actually, we're just robots to go out and deliver what someone else has decided for us. Our voices and our opinions are really crucially important, and they need to be heard. We shouldn't be silenced.
100%. Demo.
Yeah, absolutely, 100% correct. Conference is our sovereign body, and we absolutely need one at the moment to pretty much straighten out our Labour leadership. Frankly, they can't keep imposing diktat. That's not democratic. They can't keep suspending people for want of bringing forward a motion that they don't particularly like. That's not democratic. That's not how the parties worked. And aside from that, an opposition party needs to oppose the government. That is what it is there to do, to be a check on their actions, and it's done through scrutiny, through critique, standing against when government actions are not to the benefit of the many. But they go along and agreeing with them or abstaining on stuff. And this is just driving us all up the wall. It's what we have right now is a Labour leadership, because it's not the Labour Party, it's the Labour leadership that is opposing its own members instead. And we wonder why we slip in the polls. Today, I think a Survation poll it was that came out that's now showing that Starmer is now 8 points behind this worst of all Tory governments. How on earth? I mean, it's quite an achievement to manage that, given what this government has actually done. But nobody gets behind a divided party or one that's completely out of step with public opinion, which No Holding Back have brilliantly sought from us today. And Starmer's only got himself to blame for all this, and he's got to change tack. And tonight, an option has been provided to him by the No Holding Back team. This is what we have found from people who have taken part in our survey, taken part in our event. This is what they've said they want. Why don't we give it to them? This will win votes. Seems like a no-brainer. But as you said earlier, Steve, we'll believe it when we see it when it comes to this Labour leadership, won't we?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think the massive contrast at the moment, I mean, we're seeing a situation where, the Liverpool mayoral situation is a bit of an exception because we've got people wanting that. But in lots of parts of the country, we see in the party struggle to find candidates for the local elections. People aren't interested in going up to, put themselves through all of that for what I think a lot of them expect to be a kick-in, and without any reward coming back in terms of recognition and listening from the party. And if you look at what was going on tonight, we saw massive engagement. We saw, simply the fact that people were being listened to. Suddenly all that passion and the engagement comes back through. That has just drained away completely from the official party activities at the moment, all too sadly. Dan, tell us what's going on in your neck of the woods and how you saw the active level of activity from people tonight that were either watching or participating.
I can't say a lot on what's going on with that whole situation, because I think there's a lot in the background that I just don't know about, and I wouldn't want to jeopardize anything. But one thing I can say is solidarity. I do believe that the original three candidates should be reinstated, and full solidarity with my good friend Anna Lavery. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the most I can say, really. And I think people should just throw their support behind that, really bringing it back to reinstating the initial process of democracy that was available to us. We need answers, we need accountability, and we need to know what's going on, because it's terrible. But like, you look at tonight as a stark contrast from what's gone on there, and you think about what we can actually achieve. And it struck a chord with me there, what you were saying, Steve, about people going up standing for local council. I think the best thing that any socialists who are standing for council can do right now is really start to build. If you're a first time councillor, if you're already a councillor, if you've already built a bit, then keep building. Talking to people, listening to people, doing exactly what John Trickett and Ian Lavery have done. Use that exact same model. Hold a local town seminar or a town assembly where you bring local people within the ward or the area that you live, and you get them to answer some questions and talk about how they want to see local politics run and what they want to see more of in their area, and be honest with people, be brutally honest. Like, if it's a case where they're demanding something from you, say to them, if you can't do it, look, I can't do that, but what we're doing is we're building around these ideas and we're looking at what we can do. Because when you're a councillor, I always said this when I was a councillor, I said, I'm only as great as the people around me, and I still believe that today. But especially when you're in an elected position, you're only as great as the people who elected you. You're only as great as the team that you have around you. And if those people are there with you, then they should be coming up with the ideas as well. It shouldn't be down to you. They should be turning up at the council meetings with you, or whether it's on a Zoom call like that one in Cheshire that went terribly wrong the other day. But they should be on the Zoom calls and being a part of the conversation, because and I think it was Laura who said it earlier in the meeting, for no holding back, but it wasn't just about Jeremy or John or one individual. And that's the same in local politics. For those local candidates, it's not one person, it's the people, it's everyone. That's why it's for the many, you know what I mean? And that's how we change politics, is through democracy, by introducing it in every which way you can. Because when you're doing that, everyone's involved, everyone can take part. And if it all goes wrong, you just blame each other and you get on with it. No, I'm joking, because it doesn't go wrong that way. But yeah, that's definitely what I think is we just need more of this working together and listening to ideas, and you can replicate it even if you're not on the council. Like, say you're a Labour member, right? You're not an officer, you're just involved. Put something on the Facebook group for your thing. Say, I was looking for ideas on stuff we could maybe get involved with in our community. It doesn't have to be a Labour branded thing, just in our community, and ask people what they're interested in. A little Facebook poll, anyone can do it, and start to get people talk about it. Set up a little group around that, start talking about that issue, finding out who's good at what, finding out what people's skills are, and getting them involved. And boom, you're building your own kind of movement, your team, and you've got power for when you want to start really mobilizing within the Labour Party across different networks and with different people. That's how we ended up with some of the policies that are in that manifesto in the 2019 one. Autonomy, the 4-day week, talking about the Green New Deal or the Green Industrial Revolution. All those kind of ideas, they came from people building around ideas and then putting them into policy, putting them into practice. And now look, 4-day week across Europe, there's other countries that are really looking into this idea. And it's come from basically left-wing politics in the UK. Boom, boom, bada.
Emo.
Yeah, solidarity with our friend Anna Rothery, actually. We've had her on the show. And yeah, what is going on up in Liverpool at the moment is really quite distasteful, frankly. I think they've now they've had nominations now for more candidates, yet we still don't know why the 3 original candidates, who of course would have originally been passed as candidates and then were subsequently stripped of that, we still don't know why. So absolutely solidarity with Anna and the other 2 candidates, frankly, for the way they're being treated, because without knowing what's going on, it's an appalling state of play. As far as it goes with candidates running for council across the country, I can understand an awful lot why people are not wanting to do it, as there is not an awful lot to say what we would stand for as a national party. But of course, there are issues at a local level that can be stood. They're going to be standing on, that they're going to be fighting for, and they've really got to rally. It's going to be hard work for them, though. And yeah, there's going to be people who are going to look at this and think the writing's on the wall a bit with these polling figures at the moment, and think we're going to be in for a hiding in May. And perhaps I don't want to stick my head above the parapet, and perhaps I don't want to be seen to get trounced, and perhaps I'm better off waiting till next time when we might have a different leader, perhaps, which is a little bit cynical and self-serving. But it's you would expect more candidates to have come forward than have. We've got a nice bunch of candidates that are standing down my end. I believe my new comrade John Landsman is standing for Cornwall Council, so we'll see how he gets on with that. I know he was calling for unity up in Liverpool today, which was interesting. But yeah, councillors around the country, if you feel like you stand for the party and you think you've got something to stand for, even if you're not particularly in tune with the national leadership as it stands, go for it, do it.
Bonnie?
Yeah, I mean, I think our party would do well to remember that when we win seats in elections, if they're council, mayoral or general elections, we win them because of the heart and soul of the activists who put their lives on hold to knock on doors, to phone people, to deliver leaflets, whatever it is. The bottom line is the Labour Party will never outspend the Conservatives on the general election, because generally we're too skint to do that, and the Tories just get their big donors to throw the money at it. So if we're relying on the hearts and souls of the members, you've got to give them something back. And that takes the form of listening to what people have got to say. And, it was the honour of my life to be selected to stand as a parliamentary candidate in the last 2 elections. Because what you need to remember as well, if you're a candidate, you're standing on a platform, on a manifesto, on a set of policies. And if you're able to stand on a set of policies that you wholeheartedly support and have been able to contribute towards, you can honour those pledges if you get elected, and you can stand by it without having to sell yourself out or make any allowances or whatever. When you've got a manifesto as brilliant as our last 2 were, you can do it with pride. Now, I have to look at myself and think, if a general election was called tomorrow, would I be interested in running for Parliament? And the answer is no, because we've turned our back on those policies. And I would feel like I was offering half measures to anyone who wanted to lend me their vote, because I wouldn't be able to deliver what I think people are desperate to see.
Yes, well, I mean, I live in Liverpool. We haven't seen a shortage of applicants for the mayoral position. Sadly, I think, because the 3 candidates that were there have had no explanation from the party as to why the party decided to bin them, and that's pretty shocking. But I think that there's a situation up here that's quite illustrative, really, because in spite of the people stepping forward, and some good quality people stepping forward, the local chief politics reporter at our local paper was a big Keir Starmer fan in the leadership election last year. Now, he might well be on a personal level still now. I'm not sure. I've asked him. But I think it's very interesting that he wrote a piece this weekend that suggested that it's quite likely that Liverpool will see an independent mayor get elected this time around, in the reddest, politically speaking, city in certainly in England, possibly in the UK, and generally the most entrenched Labour city, with, what was it? I think in Walton it was more than 80% Labour vote in the 2019 general election. And, the previously pro Starmer, at least, I don't know if he still is, politics reporter for the local paper is now postulating that we're going to end up with an independent mayor. And I think that about shows what can be, where a proud and once great party can be dragged by bad leadership. But, the bright side is I think we saw some good leadership tonight. And I think that we, excuse me, I think it gives some hope. The only question is going to be, is the damage going to be irretrievable and irrevocable by the time that we get Mr. Starmer out, Sir Starmer, and somebody else in who's more in line with the values of the party. What do you think? Is there hope for the Labour movement based on what we've seen tonight and what we're seeing in the country at large?
I'd like to think there's definitely hope, but I think the situation in Liverpool, if what you're saying comes to pass with an independent mayor in, as you say, the reddest corner of Great Britain, the independent socialist republic of Merseyside, or however you like to refer to the place, it just shows that this was Labour's mayoral election to lose. I mean, they have handled this situation so badly, so appallingly, and people do not like being taken for fools. Certainly not in Merseyside and not in Liverpool. You don't suffer fools gladly, and you don't like to be taken for one. If you're going to mess them around, then they're going to look elsewhere. And an independent candidate, I understand there's several quite credible independent candidates waiting in the wings that could, pull off a bit of a shock here. But fundamentally, if this Labour leadership we've got now does not start to listen, this is just the start. But as you say, we do have hope within the movement. We've got these fantastic backbenchers that we've heard speak today, Ian Lavery and John Trickett. There are other numerous MPs that are absolute credits to the Labour movement. Ian Byrne and his Right to Food campaign is absolutely exemplary and is absolutely everything that our movement should be standing for. To look out for those who are worst off and pull them up, help them up the ladder. And he's far from alone. There's others as well. Dan Carden, Zara Sultana. There's numerous promising young MPs coming up through the wings. And there's every reason for there to be hope for the future. But not if this party gets detonated beyond all repair, as it looks plausible that it could. We're sinking fast. And I'm running out of things to actually say to Sir Keir at this point. I know he does watch these shows from time to time, but you do think, well, how much? We've both chipped in and given him a piece of our mind on our respective shows before, Steve. I'm not sure he's listening to us yet, mate.
Mm-hmm. Bonnie, what do you make of it?
Well, look, I want us to hang on to every elected position we've got across the country, but I fear it's not going to happen. We've got the GLA elections in London in May, and ordinarily at this point in an election cycle, as CLP Sec, I would be motivating all of our members to go out there, deliver leaflets, knock on doors. Obviously, knocking on doors and delivering leaflets is not possible, but they would be phone banking, and we'd organise massive sessions. Now, the person in my CLP who's organising those sessions is getting only a couple of people turning up. We're not seeing anything like the amount of activism that we need to hang on to London. I think Sadiq Khan is in real danger in London. And I actually think, despite, as I say, I want us to keep hold of every seat we've got and win some more. The realistic expectation is that we're going to lose a lot. And I think there has to then be the obvious calls on Starmer when we lose London, when we lose Liverpool, when we lose wherever else the elections are happening. There's going to be some serious calls on Keir Starmer to step down, because he's driving us into the sea. I mean, as CLP secretary as well, I'm not getting emails saying, tell us what we can do to help with the campaign. I'm getting emails saying, tell me why I should stay. I want to resign. And I have to try and persuade people to stay. And I don't want to be having those conversations with people. I want to be saying to people, look, we've got a lot to offer people. Come and join us on the campaign. And instead, to drum up activism from the membership, we get emails from Keir Starmer offering us a prize of whoever makes the most phone calls. You can have a Zoom call with Keir or Angela. They ain't cutting it. Sorry. They're not the popular people I think they'd like to believe that they are.
Dan, let you have a quick word on that.
Zoom call with Keir Starmer. Ooh, Damo, man, get them phone calls in. Come on, Damo. We need you to have a Zoom call. I want to see. I will make phone calls for you so that Damo can have a Zoom call with Keir Starmer. Imagine it. Imagine.
Actually, we could sell tickets to that. That would be a real
days, fam. Oh, come on.
Honestly, we would allow it.
Oh, dear. I wonder if he'd come on. I wonder if we could actually get him on the show. What do you reckon?
Yeah, it's happening. It's happening.
You risk it.
There will be calls for you if you come on and answer a few of our questions. Go for it.
I think the word socialism is like garlic to Starmer, isn't it?
Not unless it's on a leaflet so we can get elected.
Well, yeah. Okay,
talking
so I
about
mean,
hope, what you were saying about
moment.
hope there before. Sorry if I can, Steve. Like I think you got to keep hope, and I suppose I'm banging the same drum again, but it's really important. You got to keep hope in what you can do, right? The party, just like I said before, you're only as great as the people around you. The party is only as great as the people within it. Right. And if you're building within that party, you're building great people, you're working with great people, you're getting great people. I know it's hard to get people to stand for positions right now, but where you are making those wins, celebrate them, make a bit of noise about it. Do what you got to do to get people active, get them involved. And you don't have to, you don't have to agree with everything Starmer says. That's democracy. Do you know what I mean? You can disagree with people in the party. That's absolutely fine. I think something we have to get over on the left is sometimes we don't agree with people who maybe agree on other things. You know what I mean? But yeah, like just find those things that you can get involved in your community, in your area, whether it's Acorn, there's all types of different, kind of community organizing campaign groups. There's We Own It, all stuff like that. Get involved in all these activities and start building in your area. Green New Deal are doing loads of work across the UK, setting up new groups and getting activism going, getting people involved in stuff. Get involved in all of that. That's where the hope is. The hope is in you, all of you guys who can go out there and do things and start to build power and actually, bring about those future leaders that we desperately need. Those future Zaras, Dans and Ians that you talk about there, Damo. We need them. We don't just need them in Parliament. We need them in the town halls, in the community centres. We need them everywhere. That's where your hope is, man. Believe the hope's there, people.
Yeah, I mean, let's try and finish on an upbeat note, because it's been a stormy evening tonight in terms of the No Holding Back event. If you go to the low-toe level, if you go to the rarefied atmosphere of the Labour Party leadership at the moment, where the QCs and the Lords and all the other people are living, the air gets a bit thin up there, I think, and it seems to have sapped a bit of their brain power and their ability to think outside any kind of box. And I've always taken the position that the worst possible Labour government is better than the best possible Tory government. I still think that, even though they're doing their best to change my mind on it. But once you come down from the mountaintop there, where Keith etc. live, there is a lot of hope. It's not just outside of the party, that in the parliamentary level etc. that there's hope, because the activism going on in communities etc. the grassroots stuff going on is fantastic. But even in the parliamentary level, we've seen tonight that there is quality in the party. There is hope. There are people who are actively trying to do their best for the movement and not to stamp all over it. So let's finish with a positive word from each person tonight on what they've seen tonight and what that, how can we, I hate the word, because it's all corporate, but how can we leverage that? How can we turn that into something that's going to actually do good around the movement as a whole?
Yeah, I think Labour, I think what Dan said actually a moment ago is very, very, very apt, actually leads quite nicely into this. Labour is a movement of people. It is not Keir. It is not Angela. They are not celebrities having a phone call with them. I mean, I'm sure Angela's got some fantastic new AirPods, I've heard, so she'd be able to do brilliantly with them. But the simple point of the matter is, we are the Labour Party, not them. And when you're inspired, when you have inspirational leaders, and we do have them in the parliamentary party, like, as we had Ian and John tonight, we do have them in local areas such as Anna Rothery. They're up and down the country. We've got lots of Ians and Annas and Johns and Lauras all over the country, and they are inspirational and they have got ideas. And if the Labour Party starts to re-engage, as happened before under the previous leader, where you're inspiring people, where you're looking at the right demographics to bring along with you, which was not trying to seek a Tory vote that will ever go Tory, but to look to those people that don't vote. They used to say that young people never vote. They turned out in 2017 and they turned out in 2019 as well. If you give them something to vote for, you inspire them. If you give them a promise to make their lives better, then you will get it. Putting money in people's pockets is going to help them feel, free themselves from the shackles of the poverty they're in. And at the same time, it's going to help grow the economy, because the more we spend, the better our economy grows. It's simple fact. But what doesn't grow the economy is losing spending power to high rents, to paying into big corporations where the profits lie in someone else's pocket or get shuffled offshore. That doesn't go into the economy. It's spending in the corner shop. It's spending in your local area that does that. And deal with the utilities as well. Renationalisation was an incredibly popular set of policies that came in under the last Labour leader, to renationalise the likes of the water companies, the electric and the gas, to stop this, cartel of people where you're paying over the odds to line a shareholder's pocket. These are very simple ideas. And the hope is that a Labour leadership will come along. I would like to think it would be this one. Perhaps it'll be the next one that will revisit those things that worked, that inspired us, that brought us into the party, brought me into the party. I wasn't in the Labour Party before that. Let's get back to that. Some of those ideas, you can have your own ideas. You can do your own thing. You don't have to be a carbon copy of that. But it's the inspiration. You've got to inspire. You've got to say to people, this is what we offer. This is what we are going to do if we get in. And not worry about what the media are going to say or what the Tories are going to say. Just worry about what people are going to think, and embrace alternative media while you're at it, because we would get such a message out. We would take great pleasure in getting such messages out. So I hope the Labour leadership are listening to this. We want to help you, help us to help you by standing for something, inspiring us again. And that's all I want to say.
Well, at least if Angela's listening on her new AirPods, she'll have heard that nice and clear. Dan, let's go to you next, and then we'll let Bonnie round out the show.
Wait, do you know what? For me, tonight's just been a reminder, really. Sometimes you need a bit of a kick in the bum, really, innit? And it always reminds me, like, things like this, it always reminds me why, like, I care so much, because my mum put the fear in me. She put the fear. I remember I was about 9 or 10, and we were leaving the polling booths. It was on election day. And I said to my dad, who did you vote for, Dad? And he went, we don't talk about that, son. And now I've learned that means he was a Tory. Anyway, I said to my mum, who did you vote for? And she sniggers at my dad, obviously knowing that he's a Tory bastard. And she says, Labour. And I said, why'd you vote for them? Are they the good ones? And she said to me, because the rest of them will kick us out. They'll send us home. And I was like, what? I didn't get it, because home was over there where we're walking to, you know what I mean? Like, that's home. But I get it, you know what I mean? Look what's happening. And if we don't protect the ones that are going to protect us, yeah, and like, I don't just mean ethnic people getting kicked out of the country. I mean all of us, working class people, all of us. At the end of the day, if you ain't making big P's, then you're not a Tory. You're not a friend of the Tories. They will have you over. They will have you over. So yeah, stand by the people that are getting kicked right now, so you don't get kicked in future. Stop the kicking of the Tories. Start fighting. Just get involved and do what you got to do to start protecting people around you. Because Tony Blair said things can only get better. At the moment with Keir Starmer, I see it quite the opposite. Things can only get... Bonnie, lift us up, please. Lift us up. Come on.
Look, I prefer tub thumping to things can only get better every time. What can I possibly say after those two roundups? The bottom line is Jeremy inspired people, brought people to the... got people involved in politics and got people looking at their own situations and figuring out a way that it could be better. You know, one of the things that really struck home for me is when Jeremy said, things don't have to be this way. They can and they will change. And what we're seeing as a result of Keir coming in as leader, what we're seeing is people thinking, actually, Jeremy was right. Things can change, but they will only change if we demand it, if we make it so. And it has given us the impetus to get things going, like our own media, Socialist Telly, the No Holding Back report and all of that. We've built an almighty amount of solidarity, and we are ready now to force those demands. We've got to push things through. We've got to make sure we get the recall of conference. We've got to get involved, not only join a trade union, but get active and involved in your trade union, because that's how you grow your power in your workplace. And also join Jeremy's Peace and Justice project, get involved in those campaigns, push the narrative, use every single outlet that you have, because we know that we can do it. We got so close in 2017. And obviously when the reports come out about how we were stitched up by people that are now at the top of our party and they've got no place being there, when we get that report out, we know how close we were. Look, they're only fighting us because they're afraid of us. We get together, we make our demands collectively, and then we make it happen.
Well, actually, and I'm not going to make too much references to why, but anybody who's following Labour events today will know why. I'm going to just round off, and maybe a few others will join me as well. I leaked the Labour report.
Oh, I leaked the Labour report.
I'm Spartacus.
I leaked the Labour
everybody,
report.
thanks for...
I leaked the Labour